stuff ain't real, no. I'm cruising forward beneath the Hollywood signs. I'm gonna leave my personal journal to stay so cut so tight. Every time you call, I'm gonna make you gold. I'm gonna make you gold. Every time you call, I'm gonna make you gold. Oh no.
Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. How are you doing on this salty Saturday? Good to see you. Well, hello, Jess Rush. Hello, Wicked Foxy Dragon. Everybody joining us. Delighted to have you. I'm going to be a little less wiggly this time because I'm joined by my frequent silent co-host, a certain Jack Russell Terrier, who is curled up at my feet. So, if me Benny lad decides, you may hear a snuffle or a bark, and that is probably the dog and not my feet. We're talking about a lady and a gentleman who broke my heart. Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian. Yeah, we had to be salty about this one. Yes, indeed. Blah. Trump is in Vegas, says Wicked Foxy Dragon. Yeah, he was talking to Moms for Liberty earlier, if I saw correctly. But that didn't break my heart, because that was expected. You know, a well-known bigot talking to a well-known group of bigots. That's what I expect of him. What I don't expect is for people who work at a place that they call the home of progressives to jump on an anti-trans rant. I'd like to probably record this, so I'll do that before I get too much further into it. Hold up, here we go. Well, as I was saying to the audience in our live stream, what we call the Wicked Senate, I fully expect Trump to do sinister things and talk to sinister people. What I don't expect is for Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian, the two main hosts, and Cenk being the owner of the Young Turks, to start ragging on trans people, to make them a target, to sacrifice them with their political stances. Now, whether or not you think their strategy is good, let me tell you what their strategy is first. There's what they are doing on their program, at least what they say they are doing, is they're suddenly being against trans folks in sports. And their reasoning is that they say, at least Cenk Uygur made the case, that that's going to drive people away from progressives supporting trans folks in sports specifically. Problem is, you're not a progressive because you're greedy. You're a progressive because you have principles. That's ultimately what leads everyone down that path. You can be a greedy person and be a progressive, absolutely. In fact, you give me a legitimate way to make an obscene amount of money, I'll go for it. Absolutely. You give me a legitimate way to, it doesn't even have to be money, get an obscene amount of apple pie. You find me a coupon that's 5 minutes short of expiring, I will that gives me a lifetime of free pie, I will heartlessly cash in that coupon. But you're a progressive because you have principles, and that means you don't pick a group and sacrifice them. You just don't do it. The channel is called Olorinati, but I think the host of the channel is called Olime. She rags on people for getting her name wrong. I'm one of them. Although, ma'am, if you're listening, and I saw you saw one of our videos, delighted. It was the most embarrassing one for you to seen, but still, if you happen to see this in the VOD later, I apologize, but I'll toss this at you. My last name is spelled Draugelis, and I defy you to get it right. I'll leave it to you to try. Anyway, she breaks down better than I have heard anybody else break down why, frankly, you don't need to listen to the Young Turks anymore. At least, let me be clear, Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian. And it's what I have been talking about with you all for the better part of the last 2 months. I think just about every stream we've mentioned this at some point. There are things people can say that they demonstrate that their word is not to be trusted. If you want to know how to avoid becoming exhausted by all this, we have this flood of information, and a lot of it is terrifying stuff. I'm trying to avoid saying the BAD word because of someone asleep at my feet. Jack Russell Terrier. But you avoid exhaustion from all that information by learning when you can stop taking in some sources of it. And unfortunately, God, it breaks my heart to say it. Unfortunately, in my opinion, Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian have hit that point. Here is, I believe her name is Olime, a lawyer who is a strong progressive voice, talking with her friends in the leftist mafia, many of which I believe, about the Anna Kasparian situation. I jumped, though, to a point that I think y'all should hear.
And now what the right-wing tides is, with how the algorithm this, whatever deal, whatever it is happening behind the scenes, but it's a pivot because it's always been this. I think we need to, they're not genuine. And I think that's the mistake of everybody like wasting their energy of like trying to talk to them, which was my position from day one. Stop wasting your fucking breaths trying to explain to them something because they get it. They're making choices because it's a business. They are not movement leaders. They are people. They are commentators. They have a business, and that's what they're doing. And when it was to their convenience to operate with y'all, then they did. When it wasn't, they didn't, because the reality is, and as much as it hurts people to realize, is y'all aren't their friends. Like, you're not. That's what they've shown to you this entire time. They don't regard you as the friend, Mike. They don't see David as their friend. They don't see Lance as their friend, because they've been very quick to say, fuck all of y'all. You all work there. You know them personally. Y'all.
Yeah, that's the y'all she's talking about. It was misleading in the beginning, but that's who she's talking about when she says they're not your friends. For the record, don't expect anybody but your old pal Jake to be a friend if they are a show host. I think ours is a little different. I will absolutely help you move a couch, but it's because I got nothing else to do. She's talking about this group of people that they have been working closely with for years and years and years. And it is, by the way, sad to me that some of those folks will literally be harmed by the stuff they're pushing, like directly be harmed. Heartbreaking.
All adding them. You're all they've literally gave all y'all the middle finger. You work with me? Oh, you think we was boys? fuck you. Like, that's literally what they have made clear. So I need to be the first one to tell you that's not your friend. You know what happens when you regard somebody really as your friend? You see the nimble gymnastics we did on Leftist Mafia and the Jump. That's what happens when people think you're their friend. They see you as actual friends. You get what Emma got, what Emma said, what Lance was saying, what Mike was saying, what David was saying. That's what people who believe they're friends do. People who believe that they're your friend do not feed you to the fucking right wing by name repeatedly on their show, go on a fucking press run and say, hey, if you would just put your neck right there, I could position my foot right on your fucking pulse, bitch.
I know. All I hear is that you want me to cook my friend. So
My God.
no, listen.
Honestly,
Here's one thing that I will say that's really important for people not in this space, right? Because there's thousands of people watching us, but not in this position as like somebody with a platform. Just me speaking personally, but I'm sure this is applicable to everyone here. If I put out a tweet and I was getting praised by Ben Shapiro, getting retweeted by Carrie Lake, and lots of leftists took issue with it, and the few LGBTQ plus people that work within this company have reached out in good faith to have conversations. Benny has had this conversation with Cenk Uygur. Sandy Lobos, they've had this conversation with Cenk Uygur, ironically, about birthing person. I've had this conversation privately with Anna briefly in DMs and stuff. And if after having all of these conversations, seeing the feedback, how it was interpreted, how the articles, Fox News, for example, cited Lance and Mike Figueredo as the unreasonable leftists here going after you. If I saw all of this and I chose to just, still staying the course, that's intentional. That is deliberate.
She's been
Okay, so making a good point there that it is intentional what she's doing. She's been told multiple times why she's wrong about, for example, the term birthing person. She was if she seemed reasonable in her tweet saying, I just want to be referred to as a woman, it's because she was presenting an untrue problem. The problem wasn't that people were trying to outlaw the word woman. It's that birthing person was being used, it's not even used really, it was being suggested for use in very specific circumstances that have nothing to do with whether or not you are a assigned female at birth or whatever the hell. It doesn't matter. No, they put out a very good point there, which is to say, if she wanted to know what the facts are, she was given abundant opportunity to know them, and she chose to ignore them anyway, which tells you she's not interested in them. She's interested in going after a new audience. Heartbreaking. To what Olime was saying earlier, I actually disagree slightly. Slightly. She was saying, when you think of these people as your friends, you treat them like X or Y. And admittedly, she was talking to fellow content creators. What they were doing was giving all sorts of benefit of the doubt to Anna Kasparian. Truth be told, I am okay with that. Reason being, I think it is wise to err on the side of caution and to give every opportunity to somebody to get on the right path again, especially if they have earned some bona fides. Now, Anna Kasparian specifically, I don't know. I don't know how much she had to do with forming the Justice Democrats, for example. But Cenk Uygur went out of his way to actually organize progressives into a political force. That can't be ignored. It cannot be ignored. It does not give him a pass. You can't, for example, save the gypsies and damn the Jews. If you're someone trying to survive in Germany in the 1930s, it it doesn't make it okay, that second thing. But as far as being hesitant to just banish someone, I think that's wise. However, I say that only so that I can be free. I can get rid of the caveats ahead of time. I can be free to praise the larger point she is making, which is a lot of the gross stuff Anna Kasparian was saying was politely ignored. Really, in the leftist community, like the leftist content creator community, it was politely ignored because it was uncomfortable to look at. I might be guilty of this. I don't know. Really, what happened on my end is much like Wicked Foxy Dragon points out in a segment we'll talk about later. I thought it was a wrong take when I would see Anna Kasparian rattling off about this or that. I just thought it was a stupid thing to say. And I assumed, incorrectly, that she would get grilled, just roasted by her audience, and then corrected. Didn't happen. And that sucks. Because it looks like Anna Kasparian didn't have the truth in mind. It certainly wasn't a priority of hers. Let's have Alime knock it out of the park a little bit more, because she lets him have it, and she is dead on.
Literally, she's the one feeding the negativity and all the insults our way. She's literally galvanizing the hate, and I think that's what we need to understand is
it's very purposeful. It's deliberate. It's not ignorance. It's not for me. Initially, I try to rationalize these things from okay, maybe she's just misunderstood, because that's what you do. You try to defend friends. You try to approach it in good faith, and especially somebody with such a large platform. I don't want to just be
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, fuck you, because I don't want people to harden their stance, right? Because Jenk and Anna are very fucking stubborn, so I know the way that they operate, so I try.
Also, and I'm a big proponent of this, we need to make it very, very comfortable to admit when you're wrong. We need to normalize, I think would be the term, admitting when you're wrong. It's freeing, it's productive. And you know what's interesting? Back in World War II, generals were fired very easily. You would think that would mean that they would be less likely to take risks, but that's not what happened. There was a culture of firing generals very easily, but because of that, generals got swapped out again very easily. There were a lot more second chances because you didn't have one person occupying a spot for years and years and years at a time. So what you had was occasionally generals taking big risks. And sometimes it failed spectacularly and they got fired. And sometimes it changed the course of the war and won it ultimately. And it wasn't because they were so afraid of being wrong. It's because they knew if they were wrong, they would get a chance later to redeem themselves. That tangent is just to say, when you have a culture that both acknowledges mistakes and deals with them, but gives a path out, you have a much healthier culture. Sad to relate it to war, a shameful activity, but you can't be denied that is when that and in love is when all stops are pulled out. So it's a great way to study human nature.
Try to approach it on their terms, but for them to still kind of go further, unfortunately it's deliberate. Once you've kind of passed that Rubicon and now you're just attacking the trans activists as idiots, you can't really, it's so hard to recover from that, right? It's just, the mask is off.
No, totally.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, we're so.
Another important thing, when he did trans activists in quotes there, it's because Jank and Anna have fallen into the unfortunate habit of referring to all trans people as trans activists. So it's not trans people fighting for their right to not be harassed. It's trans activists, which puts more of a sinister tone onto what they're doing. So, link is in the description for that whole stream. I listened to all of it. It was all fascinating. If you guys want me to look at other sections with you, we will. But just wanted to show that part because Olime brings up two really good points. The first, and let me just summarize them real quick here. The first is that in the leftist content creator community, if it seemed like there was a gap on the criticism of Anna Kasparian, it's because there was. And it's because a lot of these folks were friends with her and just didn't want to believe that she would. What is that on my screen? Oh, it is on my screen. Nope, it's on my sleeve. They just didn't want to. They just didn't want to believe that she had gone to the dark side, but she's clearly gone to the dark side. The other thing Lime said that I just can't agree with more, and I think we should apply it to moderates and right-wingers and yada, 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 yada. There are things people can say that disqualify everything else they have to say. They are just not worth your time. And it's not when they're wrong. I mean, people are going to be wrong all the time. No, it's when they have the opportunity to be right and they continue to be wrong. It's when they demonstrate that they are ignoring facts. I am sure I have had, in fact, I know I've had incorrect takes. I've just had factually incorrect takes. I talked about how Biden should be getting rid of Louis DeJoy, the head of the post office. Damn it, I can't even say it right now. The America's fanciest mailman. But I was wrong about literally the nuts and bolts of how he could do it. The difference is whether or not you acknowledge it. And if I would have not only kept saying that he should do the thing I was saying he should do, but then gone on to keep saying he should do it in the way that I had initially implied he should go after it, then you should have stopped listening to me. I didn't, thank God. But the point is just, when they're demonstrating that they're not interested in facts, it's time to ditch them. And for that reason, I'm really not going to play Jank and Anna on this channel anymore, because it's barely a moral stance. It's a practical stance. I don't want to have to do the work of triple checking everything they say now. It's that simple, and that's what I encourage you to pick up as a habit in your own life. Sometimes one of these folks will say something so interesting, yeah, it's worth the extra work. But now that they've said what they've said, you got to know you cannot take anything they have to say as serious without doing the extra work to triple check them. Sad, but they have entered that territory. They're, in my opinion, just grifters now. Let's see what y'all have to say. Cortez Crimson. I never really watched Jank and Anna, but I did enjoy Rebel Headquarters. Me too. Absolutely. I also think that the majority of the staff at the Young Turks is fantastic. And I will probably still play Young Turks clips. And Rebel Headquarters and the Damage Report, I'll probably still play them. But Jank and Anna themselves, yeah, nah. Because I can't trust them. Zix says, I used to like The Hill when Crystal Ball and the sane right-wing guy were on. But that channel went the wrong way for me. Agreed. Wireless Mike agreeing with Cortez Crimson and saying anti-YT investigates. I like a lot of their contributors. Absolutely, yes. Wicked Foxy Dragon. All they ever do is complain and insult Democrats and Biden. Yeah, I enjoy that, but it's not very helpful. Cortez Crimson. Oh, I was about to bring up the same. Yep. Jess Rush. It's disappointing, but it happens. Like, I like the Midas touch or whatever, but I'm not a fan of Michael Cohen. Yeah, agreed. I'm halvesies on Cohen. When he's talking about specifically the things he was involved with, I'm there for it though. Wicked Foxy Dragon. They don't offer anything of value anyway. I mostly agree. Oh, I just got to use the Mars Falcons analogy, though. Jank and Anna are playing roulette, betting on yellow 99, then doubling down, then tripling down, then yeah. I do think there is some value in the Young Turks, and I even think there is value in the way Jank looks at politics strategically. I think he's got a great mind for organizing and just strategy in general. But it can't be at the expense of our principles, which is what defines what being a progressive is. We're here to do the right thing, and we might disagree about how to get there. But truly, we're the last political party in the United States that is anything other than a servant of the oligarchs. And as extreme as that might sound, I can only tell you I didn't make it that way. I wish it weren't the case. Probably it won't be the case in 20 years. But that is what it is right now. So the principles must be the defining factor of the party. Olemi also went on to make fun of Jank for running for office and then losing. Now, I wanted to separate that because that specifically I disagree with. I think he should be praised for running for office at all. I don't care that he lost. We got to encourage that in folks. And making fun of somebody for an unsuccessful run for office will discourage other people from making a run for office. Let me tell you, if you're considering running for office and that gives you some hesitation, let me be clear. Especially if you're running in an area that's normally uncontested, but really if you're just on the ballot, you are going to make it harder for the Republican Party as a whole. You're going to make them burn up ads in your district. That's burning up ad money in your district. Maybe they wouldn't have bought any if you weren't on the ticket. If it was an uncontested seat, yeah, they would not have bothered buying a single ad. But you can knock them out. You can take $100, $200, $300 as they purchase a radio ad at noon on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then Thursday, the week before the election, trying to get their name out there to make sure you don't get elected. And guess what? If 10 of you run in uncontested areas, just 10, one of you is going to be a surprise winner. And then you'll have a relatively cushy job where you can actually help people. Son of a gun. Do it. Do it, do it. If you're considering it, by all means, do it. I'm genuinely considering moving to a district which is not contested. I have only a couple, I think with Michigan rules, I got a couple more months if I'm going to do it. I think we have to live there for a full year before running. Got to look it up. Regardless, simply to drain money from the Republican Party. Consider doing it. There is value in the fight. Oh, poor Olemi. You must feel like, what were those prophets of Apollo? Able to see the future, but unable to make anyone believe them. But credit where it's due, man. She had Anna pegged early, and she was dead on. Oof. Let me set this up here. So, you know what? Yeah. I should probably share with you guys the sheet. Tell you what, if there is if there's a clip you'd like us to watch together, put it in this sheet I'm about to pin in the comments, right, y'all? Ooh, Cortez Crimson. Any positions we should run for? I've been thinking about running. Yes, stand by. That's a great question. I want to address it with my full attention. All right, I've pinned a document or link in the chat here. If you've got a clip you think we should watch, it's Salty Saturday. We're going to watch it and complain about it together. NH Moreno, good to see you, brother. Good to see you. I'm delighted. Cortez Crimson asked any positions we should run for. I've been thinking about running. Yeah, here's what you do. Google your state and shoot, what's the phrase? Positions. Yeah, we just literally like open positions, open seats. There it is. Google your state and open seats I can run for. And there are websites that track the individual. As I say this, I realize it's probably going to be a good what you can do. In fact, that's probably going to be Monday's show. But regardless, Google that, and you'll get a bunch of things looking for. If you've never run for office before, 10 years ago, I would have said go for the lowest thing, like the most local thing you can find. But then Marjorie Taylor Greene got elected. And my opinion of what it takes to hold public office changed massively. I would say probably just focus on state-level things rather than national if you just don't want the headache, It's your first ever campaign. Keep it easy. And run for a like state representative. So your state house or your state senate. Regardless, you're representing your district at a state level. That's very useful. Mars Falcon says, become a comptroller, Cortez. Then come back here and explain what the hell they do to me. That's like the budget guy for an area. It's been a while. Glad to see you all. What an awful headline, though, says NH Moreno. Yeah. Sad but true. I'm saying goodbye to Anna Kasparian as a voice featured on this channel without much scrutiny. Well, they all have scrutiny, but you know what I mean. Without extra scrutiny. But for Cortez Crimson's question, the general idea is to run for state-level stuff rather than national just because it's an easier campaign. But truth be told, if you win the office, it's just like the military. It's designed to plug in regular people, as in people who have not been doing this their whole entire lives, into the system so that you're able to do the job. Now, you're not going to be as savvy as a Mitch McConnell, devil that he is, or even a Joe Biden, or somebody that's a Nancy Pelosi, people that were there for just decades. But that'll come with time. You'll be able to do the job. The military takes Joe, who works at a gas station, and changes him into Joe, private first class Marine Scout sniper in 6 months. There is a system in place to teach you what you need to know to do the job. And if you're here on a political stream talking about, a year before the election, what you should run for, thinking about it in that kind of detail, yeah, you got the chops. You'll be all right. And in fact, I can say this. It was my job to report on the nuts and bolts of this stuff. And I was able to understand how it worked within a couple of weeks. Like literally what the process was for doing each step of this. Yeah, how a bill is put into a house and introduced to the house, and what language it needs to have, and so on and so forth. And I can tell you, in absolute sincerity, if I was able to do that, you'll be fine. You'll be all right. State level is my answer. But yes, you can also do quite local as well. All right. Got a suggestion I want to look at from Wicked Foxy Dragon. We have a suggestion from Wicked Foxy Dragon, sticking with this Kasparian thing for a while yet. Foxy wrote in to say she's been off at TYT for a while, and the reason is that, in her opinion, they never have anything nice to say about Biden or Democrats. And, well, my instinct is to kick Biden in the ribs any chance I can. I do think it's a fair point. He can't pretend like he's this awful creature of Washington when in reality he's more nuanced than that. And to never have anything to say about him's pretty telling. It says that their criticism of Biden is more performative than sincere, and that's a problem. So she provided a clip from TYT a little bit ago. Let's have a look at it. It's Salty Saturday. I'm going to give my honest opinion, but probably I'm just going to be fetching.
Today I'm signing the law of the Chips and Science Act, a once-in-a-generation investment in America itself. Today I'm ordering my administration to be laser-focused on the guardrails that will protect taxpayers' dollars. This includes requirements that companies building these semiconductor facilities pay Davis-Bacon prevailing wage, to ensure the tens of thousands of new construction jobs are union jobs.
As is evidenced by the video you just watched, Joe Biden promised when he signed the $52 billion CHIPS Act that jobs would be created for America, well-paying jobs, union jobs. But is that actually coming to fruition? Because according to a new report, one of the potential beneficiaries of the CHIPS Act, which is a Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company, TSMC for short, they're planning to not use American workers or unionized workers. They're planning on importing workers from around the world in order to build their massive facility in Arizona. Now, a recent investigation by the American Prospect has revealed that said facility has been plagued with safety violations and alleged wage theft. We'll get to those details in just a moment. There is a lot to cover. So let's start with how this company, this Taiwanese company, TSMC, is doing what's called internal offshoring, aka bringing workers into the United States in order to build their semiconductor factory and chip.
Okay. So far, I'm largely in agreement with TYT. But I do think we should be clear about what the purpose of this act was. So, back in the pandemic, there was the chip shortage that hit us at the same time, and that had a compounding effect, including the fact that one type of chip, which was actually really an older kind of computer chip that was used still in basically every car that was manufactured, that was really only made by a handful of foreign producers. There was then a glut of people not buying cars because people weren't putting wear and tear on their old cars. There was less car accidents, yada, yada. People were staying home, in other words. So production of those chips slowed. Then, coming out of the pandemic, or at least starting to come out of the pandemic, demand for cars went up. But the problem was, it took time to produce the chips that were needed. And so these foreign chip manufacturers first provided chips to their own countries and their locality. It was cheaper, number one, to get them around, and number two, they were obligated to. So in the US, we had a shortage. So the CHIPS Act was designed to increase American production of these sorts of chips. And in fact, any chip manufacturing. And it's worth noting that Taiwan specifically was one place we were trying to outdo with chip manufacturing. But the main purpose of it was to prevent us from suffering a similar situation in the future. The CHIPS Act still accomplishes this. It was a secondary thing only that jobs would be coming to the area, although still a good thing. But now that I've given you the whole breakdown of what the CHIPS Act was meant to solve, you can have a better sense that TYT here is not addressing. They're addressing this as though the CHIPS Act was a failure. But it wasn't. It was a side benefit, I guess. That seems to have been a failure. But let's look at the rest of what she has to say, because perhaps she'll address that generally. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it doesn't solve that, and they'll explain why.
In America. Here's what 3 anonymous chip supply chain executives told Nikki Asia. So TSMC and its suppliers are in talks with the US government to assist with the application process for non-immigrant visas in a bid to dispatch more than 500 experienced workers as early as July to expedite the construction of clean room facilities and the installation of pipes and other equipment. Now, according to one of those executives, American workers don't have enough experience building semiconductor manufacturing factories, which has led to slowdowns for this company's Arizona facility. That is what they're alleging. And according to a report by the New York Times, insiders at this company have the nerve to insult American workers even while the company exploits them. So some TSMC engineers said that they were concerned about how the Arizona factory would blend American and Taiwanese employees. In Taiwan, engineers work long hours and weekend shifts, joking that they sell liver to work for the chip manufacturer, they said. Such sacrifices may be less appealing to employees in the United States, they said. One former TSMC engineer had this to say, quote, the most difficult thing about wafer manufacturing is not technology. The most difficult thing is personnel management. Americans are the worst at this because Americans are the most difficult to manage.
Okay. So as far as criticism goes for Joe Biden here, yeah, one thing he could have done is make some of these deals contingent upon hiring American workers, building within the United States. I mean entirely within the United States. The workers, everything but the material itself. However, this is not much different than the complaints I saw leveled about immigrants, where then they try to get Americans to do the jobs that the immigrants were doing and found, oh, yeah, that level of expertise is way too high for anybody to do it for the amount of money being offered. So this tells me what they're saying, that it's about they're finding a bunch of polite ways to say we work our employees to death and that no American would be willing to do this. Well, we shouldn't be. I don't want us to get a taste for this kind of labor for that kind of compensation. I'm fine with us working that hard, but to make a 2-cent, actually I know the price, it's like 12 cents. Chip? No. If it is what I'm thinking about. But regardless, the point is that the cost per unit is way too small. What they produce, they don't sell for enough to justify paying a fair price for the labor they ask. We have to work on the other end of that. But it sounds like TYT here is just just angry about the insult to Americans. I don't even know that it is an insult, really. I just think we're ignoring the brutal working conditions required to make these. But they're going to be brutal whether it's done in Taiwan or whether it's done here, and I think that's what we should address.
And in response to the news, the president of the Arizona Building Trades Council told the American Prospect simply, "It's a effing disgrace." Cenk.
Yeah, so mixed thoughts on this one. What do I mean? First, hungry people are generally going to work harder than non-hungry people. That's just a fact of life, right? So, but then these companies that are based abroad kind of brag about it. They're like, our citizens are in much worse shape, so they've got to even sell their liver to be able to work for us. Ha ha ha! That's so funny. And then they're going to work their lives away for us because they're hungry and their family's hungry, and they need to do something about it. You guys aren't as hungry. Can you believe you just want to work a normal job and get paid a normal salary?
Exactly.
We hate you. Well, okay. I mean, there's a little bit of truth to the fact that yes, like I said, hungry people sometimes work harder. But I don't think that's a thing you should brag about. That's point one. Point two is, as usual, what I can't stand is the political lies. So here, one of our, somebody in Super Chat wrote in, or one of our members wrote in saying that Biden is the gaslighter in chief, okay? And there's a lot of truth to that. So he's like, oh my God, we're gonna do the semiconductors here in America. And well, first of all, that sounds good. That's a good start. You do want it made in the USA. There's a good reason why they need to be made in the USA, okay? And it's good politics, so lots of wins there, right? But then he says, like, don't worry, we get the jobs. We got the jobs, right? And it's guaranteed this, that, and the.
So I just want to point out, credit to Cenk, although he didn't stress it as much. He did just address the very first thing I talked about. There's a reason we want to make them in the United States. In fact, it is the reason. The reason we are trying to make them in the United States is to protect ourselves from the chip shortage happening again in the future. So good credit there to TYT. And then he goes on to say, but it's the political promise that Biden made. And I would say, yeah, it was a mistake. He said, oh, this will come with jobs. It doesn't really come with jobs. You might argue that, well, there's still going to be people there that are going to spend money here in the US. Local economy will still get a little boost, maybe, but that's really stretching.
Another thing, no, it's not. No, it's not. So Intel fired thousands of people right after the CHIPS Act passed. They got $52 billion of our money. Our money, my money, your money went to billionaires. The CEO of Intel made $179 million that year alone. But he fired thousands of people. Did Biden put in protections? Nope, he didn't put in protections.
That was in the initial writing of the legislation, but wow, what a shocker! That provision didn't make it. But that's the thing. Biden is aware of that. So when he is selling this legislation to the American people in a speech, which you saw in the video we showed you in the very beginning of the story, why does he feel the need to lie to us about how this is going to create all these wonderful, well-paying union jobs?
All right. Because he would be trying at that point to manipulate politicians, not the American people. I mean, maybe both. Let's take the worst case scenario and say it was both. Yeah, he's trying to get the American people on board with it, but he's also trying to stop politicians from changing it for the worse at that point. He's trying to stop the very thing she's complaining about by mentioning the American jobs it will create. That comes from Biden's age in politics. Not age in general, but how long he's been in politics. Biden still very much, well, I can't say these days if that's still true, but then, when he made that announcement, he was clearly operating under the belief that things would work like they used to. Where if you say something like that publicly, all the other politicians go, oh, he just committed us to, we can't do this now. We can't rip out the American jobs. People are expecting that now. But Republicans have since figured out that nothing Biden says will be listened to very closely. They can just be dancing, cackling madmen, tossing taxpayer money into the fire of billionaire greed. In other words, Biden didn't commit anybody to anything by saying that. All he did was give TYT an opportunity to stomp on him a little bit. The fact that TYT, though, seems eager to stomp on him, in light of their new direction, it worries me. I don't think this is them trying to appeal to right-wingers. I just think, and this is pure speculation, but I'm just imagining them sitting down and being like, all right, how are we going to spin this? Our progressive audience wants to dislike Biden, so we're going to really highlight the worst parts of it and make it seem like the whole thing is about the jobs. I just think it's them trying to tailor information for their audience, which is alarming. And again, it's why, aside from here on Salty Saturday, where it's viewer suggestion clips, I'm probably not going to be showing as much Jank and Anna. But this is a perfect clip for today because it tells you why. It's not the major stuff that I think is dangerous, because that's obvious. It's the little stuff. It's the stuff where you got to stop and think about it, and they encourage you not to stop and think about it. They encourage you to rush on and listen to the 90% of what they're talking about, which in reality is an outsized, it's a much smaller fraction of what the bill actually deals with. And I think this leads to the kind of numbers we saw in Thursday's show, where we were talking about people being depressed about voting, thinking it doesn't do anything. It does. It does a lot. And I'm bummed out to see TYT approaching this in that way. That said, again, I want to give Cenk Uygur credit for at least acknowledging that the purpose of the bill was not to provide jobs for the American people, although that was supposed to be a good thing that it did. It was crazy, I know. It was to make chips. In addition, though, I do want to say Biden absolutely, in fact, Democrats absolutely could have insisted with this CHIPS Act, if they were willing to work less with Republicans, that all the billionaire money be contingent on providing decent jobs.
Especially when he knows full well that there are no safeguards in place in the final law that ensures that these factories are employed by American workers. And that's the part that really bothers me. Just like the flat out lie to sell this to the American people. And look, I support manufacturing chips here in the United States. I think that the coronavirus pandemic showed the fragility of our supply chains, relying on every other country to produce what we need here in the United States puts us in a vulnerable situation. So just the act of ensuring that we are manufacturing chips here in the United States is great. I would also like to see some safeguards to prevent these corporations from, selling the chips to other countries without prioritizing us here in the US. So that's another issue that I have with the outcome of that legislation. But Cenk, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so look, we try really hard to be fair on this show. So when Trump bullied an American corporation into not outsourcing, keeping jobs here, the left were like, how could you possibly bully a poor company like that? And I remember doing a video, and it was at an airport. I don't know why that sticks in my mind, but I was like, no. The president should bully the companies to keep the jobs here. He's supposed to look out for us. I'm like, this is a rare thing that Trump did right. So we're honest about that. And by the way, you know what happened afterwards? As usual, Trump was full of crap. And later, that same company fired thousands of people, and Trump didn't do anything about it. He was just huffing and puffing. It was just marketing, right? At least it's smart marketing, but he was a liar.
True, and the point they're making is fine here, that they're busting Trump's chops or Biden's chops for the same thing. I would say though, Trump's whole deal was that Trump was more dishonest. Biden was I think trying to manipulate politicians. Radical centrists like, we want people to be on the verge of starvation so they'll be motivated to work. Sick if true. Yeah, no, I mean it is true. It is true, and good on you. Zix 1326 says neither party wants people to think. Yes, I do agree. I would say that when progressives become a major political force, they will require people to think. And I hope that we have a just full-on party calling itself the Progressive Party in about 5 years. Wireless Mike, I think they're following the footsteps of Jimmy Dore, God help us, yes. Deborah Kempthorne, how about Texas canceling water breaks for construction workers in the hottest days on earth ever recorded? God, I know. Cortez Crimson, this reeks of Jimmy Dore. Yep. Wireless Mike countering Zix. There are plenty on the Democratic side who want people to think, and the number of them is growing. Agreed. Yeah, a lot of the folks that play honest ball want this to be, want people to think a little bit more. I think we're going to end the segment there, but we'll keep watching this with the live audience. If you want to see the whole thing, check out the live show. That's every night at oh no.
Today I'm signing a law.
That's every night at 9. Oi, gavul. Except Sunday. Bam. Radical centrist, the cruelty is the point. Yeah. I think Biden, says Wicked Foxy Dragon, is more naive than malicious. Yeah, I agree. Wicked Foxy Dragon, see how he emphasizes that? Yeah, exactly. I think you're right. It's they're trying to be anti-Biden, which is depressing. Gray Sandragon says, it's definitely true either way. The problem isn't the veracity of that saying, it's that the saying only arises in discussions about the working class. Interesting. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Frank Stolar, I was part of a Japanese takeover back in 1989. They taught us work ethic again and trained us. It worked. Well, that's interesting. I do think in the United States, the issue we have is that work ethic gets taken advantage of. In Japan, you got a CEO that screws up. The CEO is genuinely ashamed, or at least very publicly says they're genuinely ashamed and will quit. They'll leave and as a sign of contrition. You got the bosses working just as hard in many situations. I can't say universally. In the United States, we get told, oh, you got to have strong work ethic. Oh, you got to put in the work. And then what is the biggest issue? What's the biggest theft that happens in the U.S.? Wage theft. Bosses stealing from their employees. We get taken advantage of with our work ethic. And I would rather we get a reputation for being lazy in the United States than we get, as a country, burned out making more Elon Musks. One Elon Musk costs us 1 million exhausted workers that will spend long periods of their lives just recovering, trying to get their energy back after they do 60-hour weeks compensated as though it's 40-hour weeks because they're not allowed to do overtime because they're technically listed as a contractor or some such nonsense. But I do think the United States worker will have to relearn work ethic, certainly. But it's going to have to be after we relearn ethics in the workplace. I don't know. Do you guys want to hear the rest of what they have to say? Wicked Foxy Dragon, increase minimum wage and maybe more Americans would apply to jobs like these. Yeah, I think that's it exactly. I think the learning curve needs a higher wage. That's it exactly. I think every job should have, at companies of a certain size, let's say you have over 100 employees. So that's a good sized company right there. That's a big company, I would say. I think the training time needs to be measured. I think there should be such a thing as a professional new employee, and they are not actually paid by the place that they work and do the job. They are paid by the government, and if you have 100 employees, then your 101st employee needs to be somebody who you train to do the job, and then you have do the job for 6 months, and they're measured like all your other employees are. And based on how difficult they report the training to be to do the job accurately, it sets the minimum pay for that position. I would very much like to see that, just like a secret shopper, but they're not secret. You're informed by a letter. Okay, congratulations, you won the first round of capitalism. You own a big company. Now we're going to make sure you're paying your employees correctly. I would very much like to see that. Let's just keep watching. There's not terribly much left to go. Let's jump to Anna and just watch the rest.
The company alleges that no, look, when it comes to building the facilities, when it comes to building the factories, yes, we're bringing in some workers from other countries, but this is temporary. They'll leave after that, as if that's supposed to make us all feel better about the fact that they're refusing to use American labor for this. But nonetheless, there's an excerpt from a report, an investigative report that was done by Lee Harris about these facilities, TSMC's facility, which was published before the news of the additional 500 plus workforce, and that they're bringing in from other countries. And this is what Lee Harris reports in the American Prospect, quote, I went to Phoenix to interview construction workers on site and found that while some union contractors have secured jobs at Fab 21, most workers at the site are non-union. Many are international migrants and out-of-state workers. So even prior to this latest report breaking, the one that we're sharing with you, they were already leaning heavily on migrant workers who would come here, do the work, and potentially be sent out of the country after their jobs are done. Specifically, Harris claims that only about 3,000 of the 12,000 employees at the facility are American union workers. TSMC has partnered with a Taiwanese company called Proper SYS or Proper Sys to help build the facility. One worker posed as a recruiter and ended up recording their conversation with an office administrator with this third party. The worker asked Proper Sys employee or the Proper Sys employee whether his relatives with work visas could work on the site. Quote, most of our guys are women from Taiwan, so we're very familiar with work visas, the administrator replied. If one of my people, if one of his work visas is being processed, would he still be able to apply and get it while the work visa is coming in? The worker pressed. Yeah, the administrator said. Like, we have a couple of people and it all is by situation, but we do have some people who are currently on student visas here. And they've already been hired for a job when they graduate and get their work visa, so upcoming visas as well. So
that really just does sound like they're dwelling on the workers thing. I mean, they are. They're not hiding that. But I mean, it's rehashing the same thing. Well, yeah, that's just a person within the existing policies that we already knew about, laying them out. We knew this. I don't know why they're like foreigners. Foreigners. Yeah, the point of getting workers in from another country so that you can pay them less in the United States. That's why you do it. Sucks, but we knew this. Come on.
Not only have they been leaning on migrant workers, not only are they currently leaning on migrant workers with this latest report of 500 plus people being brought in from out of the country, but they intend to continue, at least there's some indication they continue to they intend to continue to do so moving forward.
All right, so I'm two more things. One is, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. So do you have to pay a little bit higher wages in America than you do in some of these other countries? Yes, you do, okay? On the other hand, is it the idea that American workers are lazy, is that true? No, that is not at all true. I've seen the graphs, so this is not anecdotal, or this is not my opinion. This is just facts. The productivity in America is sky high, and it's been sky high for decade after decade. And part of the reason productivity is so high is because now a lot of us have to take two jobs. The husband and the wife have to work, and the productivity keeps piling on. So the idea that Americans are lazy is totally and utterly not true. Okay, but they just keep saying it and saying it for their own economic interest. The second thing is that what I was going to get to anyway, but it's one of our members asked a great question that's a perfect lead into it. Rainbow Bright wrote in, I love how they say creating union jobs while allowing union busting and never passing union protections into law. Am I missing something? Yes, let me tell you why you're seeing that phenomenon. Because unions also give campaign donations, and primarily to Democrats. So that's why Democrats like Joe Biden are like, we're gonna create the union jobs and union, right? But wait, they never actually do any protections as you're
That's
talking
unfair.
about.
No, the NLRB under the Biden administration, relatively speaking, has been good.
So for Biden and the NLRB, that is correct. And we've given you some of the upsides and downsides. When I say they never do the things, I'm referring to what Rainbow Bright mentioned, which is passing laws. So every time a Democrat comes in, Obama, Biden, Clinton, et cetera, we're gonna pass the PRO Act. We're gonna make sure that there's union protection.
So far, I mostly agree with this.
Are there, and they never, ever, ever pass them. They don't even come close, and most of the time they don't even propose it. Why? Because they get a lot more campaign donations from corporations. So they go, hey, thank you very much, suckers at the union. And for your 20%, those corporations are giving me 80%, even for Democrats. I'm gonna do exactly what they want. But you guys, I'll say some of the stuff that I do for them will create jobs for you guys. I'm not gonna give you any protections, I'm not gonna pass any bills, but the best anyone's done among the Democrats, to be fair to Biden, is have a strong NLRB like Biden does. That's like at this much, but he's like, I gave you crumbs, what else you want, right? Pass legislation, I'm gonna pass legislation, ruin the idea that I can get more corporate contributions. So hence, I'll say, I'm past this bill, I gave $50 billion to my donors, but you guys will get more jobs. Later, you.
Partially true. I think it depends on what Democrats you're looking at. In this case, I would say lumping them all in together is wrong, because there are plenty of Democrats which take donations from unions but don't get a whole lot from major corporations. That said, his critique is not wrong here. I just wish he would phrase it in a way that actually is productive. We can actually do something about it. He says, Democrats do this, Democrats do that. Well, which ones specifically would be a lot more helpful? And what legislation? Like, all right, it's not as though Democrats lined up to stop any legislation that would make rich people pay more taxes. It's that they choose not to fight Republicans on these things. Or when it comes to the bargaining table, yeah, they'll put in stuff that major corporations wouldn't like, and that'll be the first thing they cut when it comes time to bargain. So that is the issue I have with them. And I think it would be more helpful perhaps if TYT, it would be more helpful perhaps if TYT, specifically Cenk and Anna, we're clear about that. It's that when they are bargaining with Republicans, do these things disappear? But as I say that, I realize, I'm going against my own self here, my own advice. We don't need to pay attention to Cenk and Anna at this point, and I would encourage others really not to.
Find out you didn't. That's because the other guys bribed Biden and the Democrats and all of the Republicans more than you bribed them.
There you go.
Welcome to American politics.
And
all right, it was a good suggestion, and a great example of why I'm watching less Cenk and Anna, no Cenk and Anna, and less TYT these days, because it's just not worth, in my opinion, my or your time. It's that fiddling around with the margins that's so shameful, and it's also, of course, their anti-trans nonsense. Really disappointing to see. Deborah Kempthorne, that confuses me too regarding the migrant workers. Yeah, Zick says that's what I meant. Oh, let me go up a little bit. Wicked Foxy Dragon saying, I'm just confused as to if they are not paying undocumented migrants, they are temporary citizens, right? Yeah, they require less overall. They just have less rights than full American citizen workers, and so it's cheaper. It's not as cheap as if the people worked in the other country, but it is cheaper. Mars Falcon, Manchin literally gutted half of the bills. Cinema did her part too. We should wonder if anything passes better than this stuff. Absolutely heartbreaking. And then Deborah Kempthorne saying that confused me too regarding the workers. Wireless Mike says, yes, but they don't get to file for a refund. There you go. But they have all the same rights as any other citizen. Well done. Well done. Cortez Crimson saying of Manchin, what else do we expect from an oil baron? Yeah, Mars Falcon still disgusts me that the Senate is 50-50. How can Americans be so detached? Really disappointing. I do think we're going to have a hell of a lot more of a successful 2024 if we can get progressives on the ballot. The reason being, it's going to force their opponents to debate them on a lot more substance, because they're going to call whoever's up there a socialist regardless. If they have progressives on the ballot, they're going to have to point at their policies because they'll be different, and they'll have to say, this is what this crazy socialist wants to do. And that is a beautiful opportunity for the accused socialist to say, what is it you want to do? And the answer to that will be devastating. Oh, Cortez Crimson, having read my diary, has just given us a suggestion for a clip that I can't wait to do. Oh, I'm jumping on this with both feet. Oh, and it's Brian Tyler Cohen too. My man, the BTC who got on MSNBC is the GOAT for breaking down Republican flub-ups. Here we go. Got a suggestion from Cortez Crimson, and boy, am I looking forward to it. It's a salty Saturday. We're going to look at the clip and then kvetch about it. I do want to say, tying it into something we talked about earlier, if you run for office, even if you don't win, if you're running in what was an uncontested area, like if you find yourself surrounded by red hats, odds are you're in an uncontested or under-contested area. Run for office, because one of the things you'll accomplish just by running is to bleed the Republican Party of money. And boy, this year, they're going to suffer badly from a lack of funding. Why is that? Well, number one, big dollar donors seem to be, if I've read the tea leaves correctly, they seem to be holding off on a lot of their donations because it is a waste of time. They are first of all, just irresponsible. The people they'd be donating to aren't going to actually accomplish much of anything, good or bad. And in this case, I used the word. And in this case, they it just looks like they're not going to win. So they're going to be suffering from the lack of big dollar donors. And the small dollar donors, well, they're donating to Trump a whole lot. You know what those folks are getting their money spent on? Legal bills, as Trump fights a plethora of legal battles. So, if you're running for office, you are going to force them to spend money that they cannot afford to spend. Here is Brian Tyler Cohen talking about how bad the financial situation is for the Republican Party. And baby, it's only 2023. Just you wait.
Some pretty devastating news for Republicans. New reporting indicates that state Republican parties across the country are running low on cash because Trump's election lies are so toxic that it's causing many wealthy Republican donors to stop bankrolling the party. According to Reuters, major Republican donors to the Arizona and Michigan Republican parties, who have each donated tens of thousands of dollars to the parties over the last 6 years, have ceased supplying funding because of Republican leaders' attempts to overturn 2020 election results, their support of losing candidates who tout Trump's election conspiracy theories, and what they consider extreme views on issues like abortion, 6 benefactors told Reuters. I question whether the state party has the necessary expertise to spend the money well. Real estate mogul Ron Weiser, one of the Michigan party's biggest donors and former chair of the party, told the outlet.
Also, in Michigan, they'd be fighting a bunch of incumbents. And 2, really important, the current head of the Michigan GOP is insane. Insane. That does not give donors a lot of confidence in giving them, tens of thousands of dollars to play around with. That it ain't just true of Michigan. It's in a lot of these states. Get involved in your state's politics because it really does matter.
In other words, Trump is such a liability that he's turning off even his own party's donors who recognize that his insanity is causing them to lose elections. The article goes on to explain how state Republicans are misusing the money that they do receive as well, which is causing concern among donors. Quote, last year, the Arizona GOP spent more than $300,000 on unspecified legal consulting fees and more than $500,000 on an election night party and bus tour for statewide Trump-endorsed candidates, all of whom lost in November's midterms, according to the party's federal financial filings. Separate campaign and legal disclosures show money was also paid to lawyers who represented the former Arizona party chair Kelly Ward when the Justice Department subpoenaed her over her involvement in a scheme to falsely certify to Congress that Trump had won the election, and when a congressional committee subpoenaed her phone records. Wow.
Okay, so it can't be understated how important the word unspecified was in that first line. They spent tons of money on unspecified legal consulting fees. That means just as easily that all that money went to somebody's brother. It just got stolen. Sure, it could have, anybody can be a consultant. Hey, John, do you think I should have a hamburger or a hot dog tonight? Hamburger. Hey, thanks for being my dietary consultant. Here's $5,000. It's a common way to launder money. Do we know that's what happened? No, but the fact that the people giving them the money are concerned about it tells you a little bit about the politician's character here. When we say that, for example, the Arizona GOP, they're irresponsible, it's things like this. $500,000 on an election night party and bus tour. $500,000 for a party. Now, you might say, oh, that bus tour, that was designed to get out the vote. It's election night. It's election night. You're spending that much money on election night, and it's anything except ads. Just TV ads, or radio ads, or even internet ads. But it's anything except that. Boy, that's a wild strategy. That's a that's an irresponsible strategy. One might even suggest that that strategy has nothing to do with actually getting elected and everything to do with abusing your position. It's a giant party that they're paying for, a $500,000 party. By the way, all of them lost in November's midterms. So if you were going to do something wild like that and it didn't pay off, you had to know that this moment was coming, because you've just demonstrated that you are terrible with money.
Yeah, I can't believe that the party that worships at the altar of the biggest grifter on the face of the earth would misuse their donors' funds. Truly shocking. Let's be honest here, the only surprising thing about this is that it's taken wealthy Republican donors this long to realize that their party is, at its core, a scam. That the whole point of the GOP is to make empty gestures and do performative theatrics, all for the express purpose of raising money, so that they can then stay in office and then do more empty gestures and performative theatrics and then raise more money, and on and on. It is the facade of a political party built on lies, all in service of raising money and spending cash on themselves. And the people getting screwed are the rubes getting bilked for cash on a daily basis. But here's the truth of it. Republican donors aren't mad at Trump based on some long-held principles regarding democracy or decency or anything like that. They're just mad that Trump's insanity is turning off just enough actual voters who do care about democracy and decency that it's causing Republicans to lose, thereby causing these donors to waste the money that they're investing.
A very good point, and cannot be overstressed. Also note, this has a compounding effect. So when you do things like write into news stations, or write to your representatives, or just join protests, generally make your voice heard and be as loud about being decent human beings as MAGA is about burning the world to the ground, it adds to the public perception, of which includes donors. It helps move the Overton window in the way it's got to go if we want to survive. It's just got to move to the left. It has a compounding effect, because then you get things like donors seeing how against the stuff that MAGA is talking about the American people are. And they're doing their math, and they're thinking, I don't want to spend dime one on a failing campaign. They didn't win in 2020 with this madness they're on about. They haven't let go of the madness. So why would I double down on a terrible investment? I'm just not going to do that. So then you've got these folks who you have loudly disagreed with, now underfunded. Going to be a lot harder for them to spread their nonsense. You're going to be able to afford less speaking tours. I'd like you to consider something else. There are folks like Carrie Lake who's out there laundering money for Donald Trump. She's out there still going on about how she secretly won, and she's when she's doing this, the entire time she's collecting donations. What's she doing with those donations? Living off of them. She's using it to pay for hotels and traveling as she just goes on tour, talking of being a sore loser, a professional sore loser. That's all Carrie Lake is. This includes staying at Mar-a-Lago, or buying meals there, and paying for a hotel, I think a Trump-owned hotel near there. Or maybe it was a room actually in. I don't remember the details. The point is, she had to pay for her experiences at Mar-a-Lago, and she paid for that with small dollar donations. I'll tell you, people have a finite amount of money. I don't think all of those donations are going to keep coming when it comes time for the next election, because they are burning all of their goodwill on already lost elections. Talk about a bad use of money. Oh, I'm sorry, Lundy. I didn't mean that. Talk about an unfortunate use of money. So they are demonstrating how irresponsible they are every step of the way. They're just not a good investment. Let's let Brian Tyler Cohen break it down.
These rich donors aren't stupid. They know exactly what they're buying. The business model of the Republican Party is to scapegoat minorities and other disadvantaged groups of people in order to benefit the rich and rob the working and middle class. And so they'll demagogue about immigration and wokeness as long as it can scare just enough people to get Republicans elected so that those same Republicans can then turn around and pass tax cuts for their wealthy donors when they're in office. So these donors who are now beginning to withhold their money, they had no problem when Trump was using that playbook in 2016 and 2017, but they can't stand that Trump is so unhinged, so stupid, so reckless that he is causing Republicans to lose now when they think they should be winning. But the reality is that even in 2022, Democrats had an unexpectedly impressive performance, and there was no red wave, even though historically that's what you would expect during a midterm year. And it's largely because the Republican brand is so toxic because they keep nominating far-right MAGA candidates and appointing Supreme Court justices who are taking away people's rights. You think that people on the right would begin to understand that, and yet here we are. Consider, too, it's also pretty tough to frame Democrats as some evil, woke cabal being controlled by Hillary Clinton and George Soros and the ghost of Hugo Chavez, because Democrats actually got decent things done for Americans. They passed a historic infrastructure bill whose effects will be felt for generations to come. They recovered the economy with the American Rescue Plan. They passed the CHIPS Act, which has led to a historic boom in American manufacturing and will reduce the U.S.'s supply chain reliance on China. They oversaw the fastest job growth in history and record low unemployment. They passed the biggest climate investment in history and allowed Medicare to negotiate lower drug prices. They reauthorized the Violence Against Women Act. They passed the first gun safety legislation in decades. They passed the PACT Act for veterans health care despite Republican opposition. They oversaw the largest reduction in the deficit in history. They codified marriage equality for same-sex and interracial couples into federal law to help protect it against this far-right Supreme Court majority. It was just bill after bill of common sense, good policy for America. And a lot more could be done if Republicans weren't standing in the way and the filibuster was finally abolished. So
True. I just want to say I don't see what most of that has to do with Republican donors. I know he said they see that this is happening. I don't think that's true. I think there's a very narrow amount of U.S. voters that actually paid attention to any of that, with the exception of a general sense brought on by the disappointment that was Sinema and Manchin. Again, they won't know those names specifically, but they will have gotten the sense that there was a lot of big promises made by the Biden administration. We came close. An unknown thing to them happened, and we didn't get them. But they will definitely, I think the American voter does understand that what Biden was going for kind of worked, and things got kind of better. And the right-wing Supreme Court is, I think, pretty well understood now. It's repeated enough, at least for the folks that are only watching MSNBC and CNN and what have you. At least those folks have an understanding of the cause and effect here. Good. Generally, the word is out. Right-wing stuff, harmful. Left-wing stuff, helpful. Good. Good. How does that translate to the GOP money problems? Honestly, I don't think it does as much, other than it's a small factor adding on to the, I think, correct perception that the GOP is not going to win in 2024. That said, I cannot stress enough, it is still going to be a fight. This is more like Mike Tyson talking about how he's going to knock out whoever who's coming for the belt. He probably is. If we're talking, mid-'80s or late 80s Mike Tyson, yep, he probably is. But it's not like you don't have to be Mike Tyson still. We are well set up, but we still got to go out there and box.
So yeah, I think we're at the point now where the contrast is so clear and Republicans have gone so far off the deep end that it's causing a lot of people to wake up to what their agenda actually is. Republicans can claim fiscal responsibility, but when every Republican administration in my lifetime has produced fewer jobs and more recessions than every Democratic administration, I think the truth is finally becoming clear. The fact is that what these Republican donors need to understand is that Trump is the Frankenstein's monster that they've created. They let him get this far, and now there's no turning back. Their party is firmly under MAGA control. And that's why you see situations like this one, where MAGA voters are so detached from reality that it even makes Mike Pence look sane when he has to correct them on basic civics.
we all know by the number of votes that were there who won that election.
Well, let me speak to that issue.
History for this country.
Yeah, let me speak to the issue
I adore this clip.
because I think it's an issue that continues to be misunderstood. But I know by God's grace I did exactly what the Constitution of the United States required of me that day. I kept my oath. But let me be very respectful of the question and tell you, look, states conduct our elections. You never want to let Washington, D.C. run elections. And you certainly would never want one person in Washington, D.C. to decide who the President of the United States is going to be. Ma'am, let me explain it to you.
So right there, Mike Pence is doing what he should be doing in this situation. I don't have a lot of praise in me for Mike Pence, but this is exactly correct. Just explaining what happened. I don't think he's going to be president. I don't think he's got the chops. But this is exactly what you got to be doing.
States conduct elections. Iowa, where I live in Indiana.
Also worth noting, no one will respect you if you're just agreeing with them as they continue lying to you. I think even that woman who has memorized all the talking points, she's there because she wants it explained to her. She's asking him, why didn't you do this thing? She's in that small room because she wants it explained to her. She doesn't want to be appeased. She wants to be educated.
And after there were questions in a half a dozen or so states, we had reviews of the results, 60 different lawsuits that went to the courts.
70, but fair enough.
There's two ways that they're reviewed. Number one is you take those issues to the legal process in the state for recounts, okay? Secondly, you take them to the courts, which we did very aggressively. Now, there were voting irregularities that took place. You had a half a dozen states that changed the rules in the name of COVID, but the courts upheld those changes in virtually every instance, and in every instance where they would have had any impact whatsoever. At the end of the day, when Iowa certified your results and sent them to Washington, D.C., when Indiana certified our results, the Constitution of the United States in Article 2 says the job of the Vice President is to serve as the presiding officer of a joint session where you open and count the votes. Don't take my word for it. Go read the Constitution.
Yeah, when you make Mike Pence, the guy who supported gay conversion therapy and thinks that rich people pay too much in taxes, look quasi-sane, you know your party is really far down the rabbit hole. So my message for Republican donors is this. If you keep supporting this joke of a party, your investments are going to have about as much of an ROI as Trump's steaks.
Boom.
Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to
Subscribe to Brian Tyler Cohen. He doesn't need it. It's just good content. Oh, my word. Yeah. Yeah, it's a hell of a thing when Mike Pence seems like a sane, reasonable person. It's great news and a great suggestion from Cortez Crimson. I'm just being salty, so let me say, yeah, Republicans are getting exactly what they deserve. It's a hell of a thing when Mike Pence sounds sane talking to the base of the party, and when the investors, the people that finance GOP nightmare policies, even they are saying this isn't a good investment anymore. It's not even a matter of this isn't good for the country. They always knew it was terrible for the country. They're saying this is not a good investment. They think even with money behind these people, what they're saying will not get them elected. It will win them a primary, and then it will lose them an election. That is fantastic news for the United States. Good. I enjoy the Republican Party's suffering. because they're criminals. Radical centrist. Credit where it is due to Pence. He had his patriotism tested in a way nobody else had in our history, and he did pass. Yeah, he passed with like a C+. He tried his damnedest to appease Trump. He literally asked everyone in his phone book who might have had an opinion on this how he could. And he simply didn't get told yes by anybody that made any sort of sense. Mark's BBR says, I was a Republican before 2016, a never Trumper. It was only after he came along that I realized how filthy the party is. Trump brought it all to the surface. I hope the GOP destroys himself. Exactly. I'm so delighted to hear you say that. That is what I strongly suspected happened to a lot of folks. And yes, Dino, good to see y'all. Indeed. Jack McGurn Records 310 says, me too. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of, I think the importance of Trump in the U.S. Politics is that he made it clear for us all. As they say, they took the mask off. It was entirely possible before 2016 to have a good heart and be voting for Republican politicians. Similarly, people are having a reaction like that to the Democrats after, it's admittedly to a lesser degree because it was less interesting and frankly less dangerous, but after the stunts pulled by Manchin and Sinema, people are also realizing what Democrats are all about. And we're finding that both of these parties suffered from neoliberalism. The idea that basically you can decide right and wrong by who's got the most money. It's just what it comes down to. And the idea that it's always the right decision to give more money to people that have already got a lot of money, be they the head of a business, be they the business itself. Regardless, pouring money in where it already is supposed to trickle down, and it simply does not work. It does not happen the way that it's said to happen. What happens is the people who have excess already, they save it. It's that simple. They save it for a rainy day, or they divide it up as bonuses. They don't reinvest it into their company. And you can tell that is the way it is because anybody proposing laws that say they can get this money only if it is reinvested into their company, they get shot down. Trump was very beneficial for America, believe it or not, in that he made it. He made the Newt Gingrich style of republicanism be seen for what it is, and I think we're going to benefit from that. Biden, as I hear him be referred to, he's what's that thing Cedar says? Well, Biden does what he thinks the American people are going to want him to have done. Strange as that might seem to say. So sometimes he will try some backroom maneuvering, but always he does seem to be looking out for his legacy. I think he wants to be the next Reagan, and I think he might be successful. I would rather, though, he work on being the next Eisenhower. Or what the hell, FDR? Yeah, give us a new deal. I would like that. Gladius Ostensis. I hit a link by accident and got kicked out. Oh, no. Oh, no. I'm sorry about that. Mark's BBR. I hated Trump when he was running. I assumed he would lose to Hillary and the GOP would force to come to grips and do some soul searching. That's what I'm hoping we accomplish in 2024. I'm hoping that the Republican Party loses so bad in 24 that they must do that. Page CM, I still can't believe he was our president. Living in the Northeast, we heard all his sliminess for decades, especially with the Taj and AC. Yeah. Yeah, Biden is a cipher. Thank you, Mars Falcon. That's it exactly. He does what he thinks people want him to do. And I specified what he thinks the voters will want him to have done, because sometimes he does things like the backroom deal with the train companies, where the benefits of it appear much further down the line, and he allows everybody to get a moment in the sun where they can turn to their various masters and say, hey, we won. But that's an old school way of doing things. And I will point out that in the space between when the workers got their sick days, we had multiple train crashes from Norfolk Southern, including the train crash, which caused a chemical fire, the effects of which we will be measuring for decades. So that kind of backroom dealing, I don't like so much. But he is indeed a cipher, and that does mean, I believe, that we can push him. So, all this is to say, what is the goal for 2024? It is to sweep the House, the Senate, and the White House. I think it's very likely that we will. I think we're going to have to fight for it. We're going to have to fight like it's 2020 again. We're going to have to dedicate some of our free time, all of us, to political stuff. Making calls, maybe knocking on doors, or just giving $5 here and there to the politician of your choice. Vote in primaries. Get people as progressive as you can on the ballot. And if you really want to go stick it to the people that need it stuck to them, check your area. See if anything near you is an uncontested seat or is expected to be an uncontested seat, and put your name on the ballot. In the worst case scenario, you cost the Republican Party money because they have to spend money to run against you, where they wouldn't have had to because nobody else was stepping up. Best case scenario, baby, you win. You get to make the world better for you and your community. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this salty Saturday. I had a blast hanging out with you. We had a lot of new folks in the stream tonight. Great to see you. We stream every night but Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. We do Friday Peace Talks on Fridays, where we have you bring in clips and we talk about them. We do something similar on Salty Saturday, but it's just for complaining. But most days we talk about being wicked, as in WYCD, which stands for What You Can Do. Oh, my name's Jake.